Welcome to the ThunderCast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. Proud members and Marshall representatives of TheCollegeHuddle.com. Go to TheCollegeHuddle.com to check out all kinds of cool, fan-driven podcasts from teams all across the country. If you're just a big podcast nut, I know a lot of folks like to listen to podcasts as they're driving along. But anyway, big game on tap, Russ. Big game on tap. App State coming to town for the Sun Belt Conference opener in 2024. Herd setting at 2-2. App State also setting at 2-2. Big game. A lot on the line in this early SBC season matchup. So what do you say we get into this ComAssistKY.com Marshall football preview? ComAssist. We coach. You grow. It's homecoming for the herd, Russ. 10-5, the game's going down. 3:30, ESPN Plus if you're not going to the game. But why in the hell would you not be going to the game if you're close enough to go to the game? So we've got all the details, and we're going to get into every last talking point that we can. But right now, I'm going to need you to give me a quick word from our sponsors at 304carwreck.com.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
It is the 27th all-time meeting between the Appalachian State Mountaineers and the Marshall Thundering Herd. App owns a 16-10 all-time advantage right now. App also won last year. And since the series has resumed in 2020, the home team has won every single game. Can the herd hold serve at the Joan again in 2024, or will App State upset the apple cart and win one on the road? The ESPN Power Index all of a sudden loves the herd in a home game. 65.5% chance to win. If you remember, we were home dogs on this one way back when in our preseason predictions episode. Marshall -2 from where I get my line. Did you jot down the line? I'm curious.
Yeah, go ahead with your stuff, and I'll get it pulled
okay.
up here.
Marshall -2, over under of 58.5. I'm not mistaken. It was 58.5 last week, too. Might have been 53. I don't know. Like I mentioned before, App State's 2-2 on the season, although they have already dropped one in Sun Belt Conference play, though, to a West Division opponent. They were absolutely manhandled by South Alabama a few weeks ago on ESPN, and nobody saw that one coming, I don't think, because, wow, that was a concerning game if you're an App State fan, because that was in Boone. And I don't know. I know that they were a little shell-shocked on that one, right? Because that's just not – that doesn't happen to them, you know, and I can't blame them for being that way. But this is the double-edged sword that comes with playing in a really competitive conference. All of a sudden, you're just not the top dog anymore, and on any given week, anyone can be beaten. And like you mentioned in our recap episode just the other day, anybody can really beat anybody on it. You can't just say, well, that's an automatic win. I mean, even for all the jokes that people make at ULM, they're 3-1 right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and they've been handling some business.
They've been handling their business. So that's right. So App State still really good team. Not trying to take anything away from them. All I'm saying is that the middle and the bottom of the Sun Belt has kind of caught up to the top of the Sun Belt. So now you make for a really, really great, fun, competitive conference. Did you find that line before I give you my 3 big questions?
Yeah, I sure did. We have, as of right now, this is late Tuesday night, -3.5 for Marshall. Same over and under 58.5.
Okay,
that's on FanDuel.
So on FanDuel, you can get an extra 1.5 if you're an app
into
fan.
that, yeah, if you're into that sort of thing.
So 3 big questions for me, Russ. Number 1, right out of the gate, put you not so much on the spot, but I think it's a big question. Will Stone Earl continue to carry the ball so much? We saw 2 fumbles last week. One of those lost, and now we're getting into the guts of the Sun Belt Conference. Do you think you see a switch up offensively of what we think is probably just a read? Your primary receiver is not available, so the read is to tuck it and run. Or some of those we know are designed runs. Those will probably still exist.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a switch up a little bit to where you don't see that man carrying the ball 15 times this week?
I hope there is.
I hope so too.
But early in that game, you really saw how effective it could be. But later in that game, which we talked about on the recap, it wasn't there. And it seemed like it was because he had success with it earlier. They kind of took that away. And I hope that those carries that he has are going to more pass downfield with success. And worst case scenario, I hope they go to a back where we're getting 3 or 4 yards. Not just because he can't get 3 or 4 yards, but because he doesn't take so many hits like we were talking about. But the reason why I think that it will happen, that we will have less carries from him, is because there's so much film from the last 2 weeks of the success that he did have with that. And I think that we have to switch it up because of that.
Not only do you have to switch it up a little bit, you got to protect the man. You know, you're
well, that's what I'm saying.
You're now, these games matter. Mm-hmm. Like every game matters, yes, mm-hmm. but these games really matter. So because you drop two of these right out of the gate, your season's pretty much done, and you're playing spoiler at that point. And now you're jockeying for bowl bid position. You don't really have a championship opportunity if you start out 0-2, let's say, in the conference. And it's not going to get easy for the Herd. It's rough out of the beginning, and it's rough at the end. So you got to bring your A game every week from here on out, and you're going to have your number one quarterback to do that. And limiting the hits that he takes is freaking paramount. I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah.
Number 2, big question for me to you is, can the Herd defense keep Joey Aguilar uncomfortable this week? If you don't get to him, if he's allowed to sit there, he's going to slice you to pieces. Can the Herd do enough to get to him more often than not to keep him uncomfortable?
It's going to be a tall task. One, he's good at what he does. He's got, I'm looking, I don't have my phone up right now with the stats, but I think it's 1,230 yards on the year so far. They have only given up 3 sacks. And by the way, they played Clemson. So we're talking about, we've only given up 5 on the year, which is great. They've only given up 3. So he doesn't get sacked a lot. He throws for a lot of yards. It's going to be a tall order.
Yeah.
What I think can happen and what I think will happen is Mike Green will change that 3 sack total. Even if it's, hey, we're double teaming Mike Green and that frees up Jabari Ishmael or somebody on the other side, maybe Legs in the middle, Chris Thomas in the middle, or maybe it's Jaden Yates or, Amir Foster or somebody coming in from a blitz package or something. I think we do get to him because I think that's going to be high on our game plan to do.
Yeah, it absolutely has to be, and the stats speak to that, and I have more on that. I bet you do too later on. Mm-hmm. Number 3 big question for me is, even though App State is way more of a pass offense than they are a run offense, you have to be able to stop the run. Marshall was not terribly successful in the second half of the game last week. Will the Herd be able to clamp down on rush defense and bottle up these App State runners to force conversions through the air?
Again, yes, I think that we will be able to. Their numbers don't leap off the page like they do for the quarterback. They do more of a carry by committee when you look at the percentage that each person has for rushing on here. they have had some success, but it's been considerably limited because they've done most of their work through the air. And I would like to see us be so effective at pass coverage and, putting pressure on Joey Aguilar that they have to try to run against us. But I really think that we can control that run, and we should be able to do that. We did a very good job in the first half against Virginia Tech. We did we faced the best offense so far, Ohio State. They had some huge chunk plays against us. We've seen a little bit of it going up against App State. This running back by committee kind of deal seems to pale in comparison versus what we have faced so far this season. So I think we can bottle them up and contain them.
I think you have to, even if you don't allow a 100-yard rusher. It seems like the nature of the offense is like they're going to keep themselves in second and short or third and short. So you have to be able to bottle up that 3-yard carry. And that's hard to do, man, just to keep the ball. Because, if it's 2nd and 3, do they cut it loose and go down the field, or do they just try to pick up the conversion more often than not? I don't know that. App fans would know that more than I do. But it's not so much, you want to refrain from having 100-yard or allowing a 100-yard rusher, but you're going to have to be extra stout on short yardage, late down situations. Extending drives, allowing these guys to extend drives, it is not a recipe for success, because at any given time they can just cut loose and start putting up points in bunches really quickly. Don't let the record fool you. It's a loss to Clemson and an uncharacteristic game at the hands of South Alabama that's making this team 2-2. So let's get into the players. Let's talk a little bit more about who we got to be worried about when we're facing App State on Saturday. It'll be quarterback Joey Aguilar, 6'3", 220-pound senior, 93 out of 164, good for 56.7% passing on the year. You mentioned it, 1,230 yards. He's got 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he's only been sacked, like you said, 3 times. And to drive that a little bit home, he's been sacked 1 time in each of the last 3 games. Okay, so everybody's had a little bit of success for the past 3 weeks. The only team that couldn't get to him was East Tennessee. Then you talk about running back Anderson Castle, 6 foot, 220-pound junior. Get this, kid's from Boone. They love that guy. He's a hometown player, man. 39 carries, 184 yards, and a touchdown, 4.7 yards per carry. Then I'm going to feature a trio of wide receivers, and you'll see why. Right out of the gate, you got Caden Robinson, 6'2", 205. He's a senior. Leads the team in receptions and yards. 24 receptions for 375 yards. Hasn't found the end zone yet, but still good for 15.6 yards per reception. Then you slide down to wide receiver Christian Horn, 6'2", 190, also a senior, 15 catches, 291 yards. He has found the end zone once, but his yards per reception, 19.4. Then the wild card, wide receiver Mekhi Jackson, 6 foot, 200-pound junior, 16 receptions, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12.3 yards per reception, but then another 3 carries for 71 yards and another touchdown on the ground. So very versatile player, one you really probably want to keep an eye on. Okay. All in all, this App State offense is averaging 23 points per game. They are your number 15 ranked pass offense in the country right now, getting 307.5 yards per game. Guess what? Let's make it not so bad. The herd passing defense, number 33 in the country right now, only allowing 175.8 yards per game to opponents. Russ, how you feeling about this App State offense and how they match up?
Well, Joey Aguilar's put up points. Put up yards against just about everybody. But the rushing yards by team, when you look in the 4 games, against ETSU, their first game of the year, they had 174 rushing yards. Since then, they had 149 versus Clemson, 98 in a very close game against ECU where they only won 21-19. And then 119 last week in a blowout loss, or their last game. Or no, it was the last game that they played.
Yeah, it was South Alabama.
Yeah, South Alabama.
Because
yeah,
Liberty got canceled.
Yeah, 48-14. Okay. So their rushing attack has not been crazy good. It's been kind of pedestrian. But Aguilar is doing everything. You're talking about 326 in the opening game, 214 against Clemson, 424 yards versus ECU, and then 266 in that blowout loss to South Alabama. So what he hasn't had through 4 games, only 6 touchdowns. That's not leaping off the page with 1,230 yards. So they've done a lot of yard accumulation, not converting to a lot of points. But they are not one-dimensional. They have a lot of success. I think 4.7 yards per carry by Anderson Castle, if I'm remembering correctly, and somebody else had 7.1 in limited carries. They have people that can get those 4 and 5 yards a time when they need to. Basically, it's going to come down to, can we contain Joey Aguilar and force them to try to beat us by the run, which I like our chances stopping their run. The big question is, of course, stopping Joey Aguilar, the first part of that.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk about real quick. And you talked about the lack of rushing yardage against South Alabama. I can't really look at that total and see that to be true, because they were behind so early that you can't afford to run. You have to pass. So if South Alabama doesn't jump all over them, in that game early, would they have had more success? Potentially. I don't know. But everything else doesn't speak that they would have had a tremendous amount of running success. Then you look at Joey Aguilar and his passing prowess. You're right, man. 424 yards against East Carolina, but he threw 2 touchdowns and 2 of his 3 interceptions, and they eked out of the victory, 21-19. Right? So what are you going to get? Who's going to show up? Which App State team is it going to be? Is it going to be the one that racks up a ton of yardage but can't put too many points on the board? Or is this the game where it all clicks for them because they've got a lot more that they're playing for than just a victory this particular weekend? I don't know. You can never, ever sleep on App State. You just can't do it. If you do, you might as well file this one under the loss column. Nobody is sleeping on App State. They've earned the reputation of a team you have to respect no matter what their record says they are. And I expect the Herd to do that. It's just a weird scenario.
So went back to the South Alabama game. 42 of their 119 yards came on their final drive. So before that, they didn't have much at all, and I understand they got jumped on early, but they increased their yards per carry on that final drive to get up to 4.3. They had 28 rushes total in the game. So they just were not having any success at all early in the game against South Alabama. That's why they had to go one-dimensional, and that might be why they jumped out to such a big deficit to go backwards. Usually you jump out to a lead, but they really got behind the 8 ball quick.
They did.
But they were made to be one-dimensional, and ECU was the same thing, 98 yards for the entire game. So it's something definitely that they, I'm sure, consider a problem, rushing for 98 and 119 in the last 2 games. They're barely over 100 yards on average the last 2 games.
Yeah, and this is the first game of the year where I've felt that it's going to be strength on strength because we have an actual decent sampling size. Both these teams have played top-tier opponents, them Clemson, us Ohio State, and also we played a decent Virginia Tech team. They're not really great anymore. They're a decent opponent. But now I feel like it's strength on strength for the first time. Strength in Marshall's pass defense versus strength in Appalachian State's pass offense. something's got to give, right? And the equalizing factor cannot be all of a sudden App State runs for 250 yards. That can't be the thing that happens this week. So intriguing matchup and a very intriguing matchup. Let's talk about this App State defense real quick. I got a quartet of guys I got to talk about. It starts with safety DJ Burke, 6 foot, 195 sophomore, leads the team in total tackles with 30, 15 of those solo, no other anything. Which is a trend here with this App defense. Linebacker Caden Sullivan, 6'2", 230. He's a junior, 27 total tackles, 11 of those solo, and he adds a pass defended. Safety Ronald Clark. Is that what did I write that down right? Yeah, Clark. Can't even read my own writing. 6 foot, 200-pound senior, 20 total tackles, 10 solo, and that's it. And then linebacker Kyle Arnold, 6 foot 2, 230, junior, 19 tackles, 3 solo, and that's it. A noticeable absence from these tackles for loss, impact play type things on these top 4 tacklers. Impact plays as a team, though, they outpace the herd in several categories. They got 8 sacks on the year. They've got an interception. They're really good at knocking the football loose. 4 forced fumbles, and 3 of those have been recovered. So they swarm to the football, and they like to knock that bad boy out. So herd runners, herd receivers, take note. Protect the football. They will be coming after it in this one. All in all, Russ, this App State defense is allowing 35 3/4 points per game, which astonishingly is just behind Western Michigan, who's allowing 35.5 points per game. They are allowing 212 rushing yards per game, which astonishingly is tied with Western Michigan at 121st in the country. So not a very good rush defense for App State either. And they're allowing 240 pass yards per game, number 100, and the herd's only gaining 184 pass yards per game, good for 102. So that's kind of like meh versus meh. But if this is any indication of what we might see versus what we just saw against Western Michigan, I think you like some of those matchups if you're a Herd fan. So what about this App State defense has your ears perked up?
So the very first thing that I noticed was they have a total of three passes defended for the entire year through 4 games. 3 passes defended. Anyone that remembers what we had to face against Virginia Tech, they had 12 in that game alone.
Right.
But this passes defended, I mean, that's tip balls at the line of scrimmage or by a linebacker. It's not just a defensive back making a play on the ball. Only 3. And they have 290 total tackles when you're talking about solo and assisted. And we have 240 solo. You know, it just seems like this defense is where they're failing right now. You know, they've got Joey Aguilar, a good quarterback. They're putting up a decent amount of points per game. Not what we've seen them do in the past, but not terrible. But 48-14 loss, just defense just crumbled against South Alabama. That can be an anomaly. You know, Clemson, that game is what it is. I mean, to me, that feels the same as us versus Ohio State. Very, very, very similar. So you can't look at that and say, well, they played horrible in that game. Pretty much everybody in that position is going to play around that same or worse than what App did. But against South Alabama, it just seems that they got exposed on the defensive side of the ball. And they don't have those impact plays that you're talking about. Yeah, they have 8 sacks on the year. It just 3 passes defended. No one on here screams, we have to watch for this guy. I mean, Burke's the safety with 30 solo tackles, 30 total tackles, 15 being solo. That's pretty good. But top to bottom, it just does not seem to be there where you're like, hey, I really have to watch for this guy because he's got 4 sacks on the year. Hey, I really got to watch this guy because he's got a bunch of interceptions or passes defended. He's that lockdown guy. what I'm looking at is a defense that gives up a lot of yards and a lot of points.
Yeah, well, let me kind of add to that a little bit. You go back and you look at what South Alabama did from an individual player standpoint in that game. Their quarterback, Gio Lopez, he goes 16 of 24, $154, and 2 touchdowns. Sound kind of familiar?
Yeah.
Right? But he also goes 7 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown.
Right. Yeah.
So he broke one loose and went 50, Otherwise, it's 6 for 50 yards. He had a really good game, but you know what? We have a little bit of a dual threat quarterback on our own, right? I wouldn't consider Stone Earl to be a rushing threat, but I consider him to be a guy that can make a play for you, right? But they piled up 320 rushing yards against App State.
They were
game,
just gashing them, man, gashing them.
I mean, one of the coolest names in college football, South Alabama running back Fluff Bothwell went 14 for 116, and we are seeing A.J. Turner steadily go 8 carries for $110, 9 carries for $120. So I'm not prognosticating that this will happen. I'm just saying, like, hey, man, we've got a similar built type of offense, it seems like, like we're making the same we're putting up the same similar stat lines week in and week out. So am I expecting a 48-14 Herd victory? Hell no. Absolutely not. I'm not expecting that. But I'm saying there are areas where the Herd can have success in what we are already doing well. All right. Last note is special teams. It's place kicker Michael Hughes. By now, everybody knows the name, GW graduate. We recruited him heavily, and he ultimately chose App State for, whatever reason. But I would imagine one of those reasons is head coach Sean Clark is also a GW graduate. But he is perfecto on the year. 5 of 5 with a long of 36 on field goals, 10 of 10 on extra points. Absolute weapon for Appalachian State. He's as sure-handed as they come, or sure-footed as they come, when it comes to kicking. Russ, how about some ComAssistKY.com keys to victory in this one for the Herd?
Well, I don't think it's any secret based on what we talked about right now. Number one for me is get to Joey Aguilar with sacks, QB hurries, tip balls, and interceptions. You're going to have to do everything to not let this guy just throw all over you. He's averaging 305, 307, somewhere yards per 305 to 306 yards a game with 1230 in 4 games. He can tear you up and, put up 400 earlier already this year. He's an absolute weapon, and they are more pass heavy on yards gained than they are on rushing. So you absolutely have to get to him. The problem is nobody's really been able to control him. They have gotten 3 interceptions against only 6 touchdowns on the year. But again, he's got 1,230 yards and only been sacked 3 times. So we got to do that, number one, to have a really good shot at beating their offense down.
So the only reason that's not my number one key to victory is because I went offense on my number one key to victory, but it is my number 2 key to victory. And it's a little bit more of a microcosm. To me, it's the Herd defensive line has to get that penetration without needing to bring the extra defender to come after Joey Aguilar. You want to be able to bring that defender at your luxury, at your leisure, to throw this offensive line off balance or to throw Aguilar off balance. But primarily, you really want to be able to get to the quarterback with your down 4 linemen. That's what I want to be able to see. We've got guys that we know live in the freaking backfield, and they've done it against every defense we've played, with the exception of Ohio State, and we did a really good job of getting in the backfield in that game. I just wouldn't say we lived in the backfield. Right. But App State ain't Ohio State, right? Just like Marshall's not Clemson's offense. It's the same, but that is easily the biggest defensive point. That key to victory is you get to Aguilar, you most likely win the football game. You force him into bad throws or quick throws or whatever, you get him off his spot, big time. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is to win the 3rd down battle, and we need it to keep our drives going from an offensive standpoint, but we need to keep them from getting first, so we force them to punt. I know that's football 101, but that third down battle, it's going to be really interesting for me to compare what we were able to do against them versus what they were able to do against us at the end of the game.
Yeah, it's football 101 for a reason. It's because that stat freaking matters.
Mhm.
Most of the time, that's a meaningful statistic.
Their third down percentage, just to add to that, is 20 out of 53 on the year, 37.74.
Okay,
So,
not great, not terrible, but serviceable.
yeah.
And that's where it goes back to winning first down and winning second down. If you're in third and short, tough. That's where the Herd defense is going to have to come up and make that stop on a 3rd and 3 or a 3rd and 2, and that's tough. That's tough to consistently do.
And the reason that I picked this for us versus them is we're pretty daggone similar. Ours was 22 out of 57 for 38.6 on the year.
Yeah.
Now Virginia Tech brought that way down, but they also faced Clemson like we played Ohio State. So
Right.
We have to do a better job than what we've done so far, and we need to keep them where they're at or make it worse.
So my number one overall key to victory for the Herd is it is A.J. Turner time, baby. You're facing the number 121st ranked rush defense with Appalachian State that allowed 320 rushing yards to South Alabama. It is A.J. Turner time. We have seen him break the long run in just about every game this season, with the exception of Ohio State. It's time. He could have that 150-yard rushing day. He could have a 2 to 3 touchdown rushing day. It's his time. This is his matchup, right? Because they've been exposed to a degree, and not against a blue blood college football playoff team. It was against a conference opponent that they can do that was able to do that to this defense. So A.J. Turner can do it. Jordan Houston can have a big game. Ethan Payne can have a big game. Stone Earl can have a serviceable rushing day without excessive hits on the man. But by and large, it is A.J. Turner time. Feed the kid. It is his time to shine. Russ, what's your number 3?
Let me flip the script on you, because I agree with what you're saying there, but I think because they know how bad they are, that they are going to try to key on the run. So that's why my third key to victory is the air, and then all capital raid. We need to finally see this with more passes downfield. We've done a great job, don't get me wrong, about throwing across the middle and longer passes and things like that, but we need to actually see that 65-35, because I feel like they're going to be trying to cheat up on the run, thinking we're going to try to gash them like we've seen happen to them already. So we need to take advantage of that. They've got 3 pass deflections so far on the year. I'll keep coming back to that. We have weapons at wide receiver. We've got Metcalf. We've got Fitzpatrick. When it goes down the line, Braylon Brown, Carl Chester had a big game in the last game. You've got the tight ends that we've now started to incorporate a little bit more, and I feel like we will as the weeks go on. We have weapons, and we say it all the time. Is their number 4th defensive back as good as our 4th wide receiver? We haven't even seen a whole lot out of Tyshawn Chapman yet. We haven't seen a lot out of Chuck Montgomery yet. We've got weapons everywhere. I think this is the game that, yes, while we can still have success on the ground, I see us actually having the air raid, because they will not be looking for it as much based on what we've done so far this year. And they will try, as the 121st ranked defensive rushing ranking in the nation, they will try to key in to prevent us from beating them on the ground, opening up the air raid to destroy them.
Yeah, this is better be the time that it cuts loose, right? I mean, you obviously want to go with what's working, and there's no reason to deviate from the run if you're getting 6 yards a carry, right? There just isn't. But you're right. We've all been waiting for it, and we've all been saying, well, you and I have been saying, maybe we're waiting until the start of the conference to start showing a little bit more. Well, okay, it's the start of the conference slate. Now it's time to start showing a little bit more. Is there more than 1 or 2 targets a game to those tight ends? Is Cade Conley finally going to get a reception, on this season? Because damn, he's overdue for one. We saw one beautiful pass play to Toby Payne, and boy, it worked like a charm. Beautiful. Who would have thought a tight end wheel route was going to be the route you run? But damn, it worked like a charm.
Man, and I didn't get to say this. I got to say it on the Sunday call-in show that we do, the post-game spaces, and I didn't get to say it on the recap. But watching that on the replay, the timing on this play, you could tell it was another reason my coaching grade was high, because they have had to have practiced this so much. It was almost illegal because he was almost going forward before the snap, because they had timed it to the millisecond to where he never had to slow down whatsoever. And that's hard to do in a shotgun situation.
Mm-hmm.
But he did that and did a little stop and go and was wide open. And man, that guy is fast. He's physical. That play, they ran it at the exact right time. To perfection. If we can do that a couple of times later on in the year, we're going to be hard to stop at the tight end level.
Yeah, it feels like obviously that you're installing a couple of plays that for each game, specifically for this game, and you might not run them again for the rest of the year. And just because we hadn't seen it before, I'm not saying they won't run that play again, but we hadn't seen it to that point. Right. You know what I'm saying? And it worked wonderfully.
Sure.
So you might see it again later in the year, but you ain't going to see that this week. Right. So I'm wondering what they're cooking up. Like, what are we going to do to, take advantage of the mismatch that is Toby Payne, the mismatch that is Cade Conley, the mismatch that is Fitzpatrick and Metcalf and all these guys, who's going to – there's just the possibilities are kind of endless, but I'm ready to see some of those possibilities, okay? For me, my third key to victory is it's got to be an assignment defensive backfield football game for Marshall. You've got to play great coverage on these App State wide receivers and tight ends. Blown coverage will get exposed in a hot second. And if it happens and it becomes a pattern or a problem, it can get ugly quick. So for the first time, well, really the second time, you've got to play really, really good assignment football across the entire defensive backfield, right? You're not going to be afforded probably to bring JJ up and play close to the line of scrimmage very often. You're going to need him, cutting off half of the field deep and all that kind of stuff. Josh Moten has been playing wonderfully in this early season. And so have, Amir Foster, Jacoby Henderson, and all. They've been playing great, but they're going to be really tested again this week, like they were tested against Ohio State. They're going to be really, really tested because these guys pass the football and they're good at it. So it's assignment football for me. Do you have a fourth?
I do. Make our field goals because they're going to make theirs. They've got a good kicker. Wish we had him here the last several years because he's a homegrown guy that's had a lot of good success. But they're going to make theirs. We really need to make ours because I have a feeling this is going to be a closer game. Mm-hmm. And if it comes down to us leaving points on the board by missing some field goals, it might not look as good for us.
Yeah. Marshall left a touchdown off the board last week, by missing a field goal and then choosing to kick a field goal instead of potentially getting that, 4th and 2 touchdown. You can't have that this week. You might be in a situation where you got to lay it all out there. And you remember a couple of years ago, this game came down to a special teams play, and it was back and forth. And it was a special teams play that ultimately won the game for the Herd a few years ago. My number 4 key to victory is one that we griped about just a few days ago on the recap. You're going to have to engage the Joan. And I don't mean that the team has to engage the Joan. I mean, kind of the Joan has to be freaking energetic and engage. It's homecoming, dude. It's App State. It's the SBC opener. What more reason do you want? The Herd is playing. What more reason do you need than that? The Herd is on the field, right? But that's what you're going to have. You're going to have to provide this team the type of environment that they would be playing against if this game were in Boone, North Carolina, right? A very energetic, very loud, very, very engaged crowd. As many of them as are there, I don't know. All of them wearing Kelly green and white in the correct section need to be loud and engaged the entire game. Actually, you need to be loud on defense and quiet as hell when your team has the football. If you didn't know how you're supposed to be a fan at a game, quiet on offense, loud as hell on defense. Because App State definitely doesn't want to go 0-2 in the Sun Belt. They don't want to lose a tiebreaker to Marshall, which might come down later in the season to playing big implications when it comes to bowl selection or maybe even championship selection. And I think they've got a little something to prove this week. Not so much to themselves or about who they are or the quality of their team. It's to prove how resilient they are as a community because of everything. Just like Huntingtonians kind of rally around Marshall, and that is their identity to a certain degree. Boone, North Carolina's identity is Appalachian State University, and particularly Appalachian State football. So if their football team goes out and has a really strong showing and gets a win against Marshall, it just speaks to the resiliency of that community. And honestly, I think they could benefit greatly from that. That'd be a big pick-me-up. That said, we don't owe that to them. We need to go out and take care of our business. But they're playing for a little bit more this week than a win.
Yeah, and I think that you will see them dedicate this game to everybody back there, and I think that they will be as pumped for this. Their fans travel well. I still think that you're going to see a lot of people travel up here, even with the devastation that's going on down there. I think you'll see a lot of them up here supporting their team. I think they will be ready, and we're going to have to bring it, like you said. We need to be even more ready with a huge, loud, energetic fan base. Cannot agree more with that key point that you brought up.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to these guys, and to those fans that might make the trip up there. This will provide some much needed levity from the situation. Even if for 3 hours you can escape the problems that are going on, and you just get to focus on cheering for a hot minute. It's a big game, man. The Herd can't just match that energy. They're going to have to outpace the hell out of that energy, and then some. I feel like. Do you have an MVP for the Herd this week?
I do, but before I get into that, I want to key on what you said there, and then what you didn't say right at the end is you talking about their fans coming up here for levity. There's going to be a bunch of you guys, and if you find yourself listening or watching this either on the way up or before you come, what we want to say is please stop at any tailgate, not just ours, but definitely come to our tailgate if you want to. I put out a guide on social media, and a lot of App State fans have been looking at that and everything. But there are going to be countless people that will want to stop and talk to you here, show you hospitality. You don't know how many people that I'm seeing on social media right here asking about how they can physically get stuff and give it to you so it could go back down there. I mean, so many people are caring about what you're going through right now. The football game, once it gets on the field, like you like to say, once the whistle blows, will be mortal enemies. But up until that time, we're going to be out there tailgating and having a good time, and we really, really want to drive that point home. Come and find a tailgate. Take your mind off everything that's going on and just be friends for a while and enjoy some time away from all that. Then enjoy a football game where we're rivals on the field, and then afterwards come back out and enjoy some more time with everybody.
Absolutely.
MVP for me, it's going to have to be Stone Earl. I went back and forth on. At one point, I had a defensive back listed on here as the MVP for the game. I feel like there's so many different areas where we could have one person just impact so much that they would be the MVP. But I'm going with Stone Earl based on my key to victory earlier about the air raid. I think that he's really going to put up some numbers. He's going to be compared in this game to how Joey Aguilar does. Again, this is a conference rival that we're playing, and if Joey Aguilar puts up 330, we're going to have people saying, well, he beat Stone Earl. Stone Earl put up 250 or whatever. They're going to be looking at that sort of thing. I think that he really needs to come in, have just a huge game. And if he does that, he'll be my MVP.
I think that's a good point. And for most SBC fans, this will be the one to where they really start to gauge who Marshall is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really give a shit who we've played up until that point because it doesn't affect them.
Right.
So if you outpace what Joey Aguilar does, they might go, hey, this Herd team might be for real.
Sure.
You know, so that's a good point. I'm sticking offensively with AJ Turner. I think the matchup is just, it's there for the taking, man. It's there for the taking, and it's hard for me to fathom. And it could happen, but it's hard for me to fathom that you go from allowing a buttload of rush yards to all of a sudden not allowing any. That's dude, if that could happen, like more teams would do that. So I feel like offensively, he's the guy that can make the whole thing work. And then on defense, I'm going with Jabari Ishmael based on what I saw against Western Michigan, because Mike Green commanded such a double team and at times triple team and, the chip, and it left Jabari open to do more things. And wouldn't you know it, late in the game when the Herd needed to get the ball back, bam, he's the one who forced the fumble that Jaden Yates was able to recover. So I think I'm going to see more of the same. I think I'm going to see teams gang up to stop Mike Green and open some lanes for Jabari Ishmael.
It's going to be a tall task. They've only given up 3 so far this year, but that's one of the things that I expect to happen as well.
Yeah. All right. So score prediction. What you got?
Man, I see it real close, razor thin, and I think that they're going to be playing with a purpose. I think that they're going to, not only with what they've gone through as a community, but before that game, they got blown out on a national stage 48-14 by South Alabama. I think they are going to be ready. With the exception of last year's game, we seem to have always played them very close. It's been a long rivalry. 34-31 Marshall. Okay. And I see it being a very, very back and forth kind of shootout game. Weirdly, I see a big defensive battle, even though it's 34-31. I see this hard hitting affair where both teams just keep kind of driving and scoring. So 34-31 Marshall for me.
Great score. Great score. I would like to make one note about that 48-14 game against South Alabama. That could have been worse because App hit a Hail Mary to end the half.
Yeah.
They could have gone, that could have been a 48-7 game. I mean, that's an anomaly. I cannot judge that anything more than an anomaly, that it won't happen again to them because they're a better team. That said, I too like it. A close game. I like it a little lower scoring than you. 31-24 Herd, and it does not come down to a kick. But not a blowout in either direction.
Yeah.
Just a really classic throwback Southern Conference hard-fought game that we've seen both times at Joan C. Edwards Stadium since this series has renewed. In 2020, it was the Brandon Drayton peanut punch, and Nazi Johnson recovered in the end zone, that kind of thwarted any type of comeback for App State. And then a couple of years ago, it was the blocked punt that was the difference maker in a really tight game for the Herd. I don't see this one being any different. Charles Huff has won close games against App State, and he has lost close games against App State. So 31-24. Herd holds serve at home and moves to 3-0 and 1-0 in conference. You got any final words on this one?
Not on the game, but I do have final words on what we mentioned on the recap and regular episode earlier in the week. So if anybody is watching this and not seen this before, we, the Thundercast, on behalf of Marshall fans, are trying to organize a donations monetarily to assist App State students, staff, faculty, fans, everybody in Boone. So we are going to be donating on our live tailgate show the money that we have raised throughout the week and during the live tailgate show to App State. You can do that by sending me at Russ Livinggood on Venmo, at RUSLIVINGOOD if you're listening and not watching. we're collecting this money throughout the week, and live during our tailgate show, whatever we have, we're going to send down to the official App State fund that they have organized and put out. As of right now, this is extremely late on Wednesday night, and we're at $860. So we hope to be well over $1,000 to send down there. And there's a lot of people asking about how they can donate. So I assume that amount will go up. If you stop by the tailgate, we will also have a physical donation jar there where people can put in cash, coins, whatever, and we will count that during the tailgate so we can add that to the total.
Yeah. The ThunderCast is always trying to give back wherever we can. We do it with Herd fans when we can. We do it with Herd Athletics when we can. And now is our opportunity to give back and help a conference mate, a rival, and really just a community in need. So Boone, North Carolina, the ThunderCast has been thinking about you, and we're doing what we can to send some support your way. Russ, I've got to talk about one other thing before we close out this ComAssistKY.com Marshall football preview. I'd like to bring attention to another cause that's happening right now. Several years ago, Marshall had an offensive lineman by the name of Sean Behrens. And Sean, during his tenure at Marshall, he had some pretty rough luck with injuries, underwent a couple of surgeries, and his ability to play was just hindered, but I got to know his family, in a social type way. And when we were about to move to Florida, they offered us some tremendous insight in a state that we knew nothing about and a geographic area that we knew nothing about, because they were from the Tampa area. And they were just a huge benefit to us. And we caught wind that Sean's sister, Peyton, who was also a Marshall student, she volunteered with Herd Equipment for a hot minute while, Sean was on the football team. We caught wind that Peyton, young Peyton, by the way, has stage 4 breast cancer. And just devastating news for this wonderful young lady who I've interacted with a number of times on social media over the years. So there's been a GoFundMe set up by her family, and I'm going to link that in the description to this episode. So, Herd Family does what Herd Family does, right? They rally around. And if we can rally around our friends in Boone, North Carolina, we can rally around some Herd Family members that are in need, because I could not imagine having a 20s, early 30s something daughter with stage 4 breast cancer.
Yeah.
So Herd fans, rally around, dig into your pockets and donate to the family's GoFundMe account. They've got a goal set here of $200,000, because I'm sure cancer treatments are not cheap. Let's do what we can. Let's drive that amount raised up as high as we can, and show them that we do not only care about our Herd family when they're members of the team, but we care about them forever. Russ, on that note, I've got nothing else. Take us out of here.
Yeah, so whether you see us at the Cam, whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Dot, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd is the ThunderCast. As they would say back in the day, don't worry, beat Appy. It's the ThunderCast. We'll see you next week. Later.